Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry, where we are continuing our shipyard walk and looking at the next ship that has been added, and that is the Black Chapayev, the black version of the regular Chapayev, or as we like to call it around here, the lazy premiums. So, what's the difference between a Black Chapayev and one that isn't? Let's compare the two. Well, the first thing that becomes notable is that the Black Chapayev gets a rapid reload compared to the precise aim of the regular Chapayev. She gets the same defensive AA, but for reasons only known to wargaming, she does not get a radar. In terms of actual ship stats, she gets a little bit more hit points, can take probably one battleship shell extra if she's lucky. Other than that, the guns are pretty much the same. You get a little bit more turret traverse, but other than that, it's the same. The torpedoes are the same, the AA is the same, and the concealment is the same. So what we have here, in fact, is a Chapayev without radar and without the precise aim, but in turn with a rapid reload. It is a rapid reload 1, so it increases your reload speed by 15% for 20 seconds. Now, if we're looking at the actual reload speed of the ship, the base reload, we have it down to 7.5 seconds, so it's around about a second faster on reload when the rapid reload is active. It doesn't make a huge difference in practice simply because the Chapayev already has a relatively fast reload on these guns. So, Chapayev, what is that ship about? Well, Chapayev is, or the Russian cruisers in general, are not technically support cruisers or not pure support cruisers, although they do have some capability in that. They usually shine due to a large number of guns, a relatively poor turning time, but they're quite fast, and they're good kiters, especially the light cruisers in that regard. So the way I've set her up is obviously going for, well, not quite obviously, but I am going for the main battery reload. It is entirely valid to go for the extended range here as well. So either of these two is valid, but I figured this is a ship that is based around slinging as much ordnance downrange as humanly possible. So we're going to go for the reload rather than for the extended range. But both of them are very, very sensible. The historical camo, in case you get it, is gives hit points, range, torpedo speed, which really isn't that useful given that the torpedoes on the Soviet cruisers are very, very short range normally, and large caliber AA range, which, okay, we'll take it. So I would have preferred dispersion, but it is what it is. So if you purchase the historical camo on top of this, then that's what you get. Setup wise, main battery mod 3 is kind of the weapon of choice here again, because these are not hyper-agile light cruisers that you are using to dogfight other light cruisers and destroyers in capture circles. These are ships that excel at mid to long range in either burning stuff down or in unleashing precise salvos of armor-piercing shells against unwary destroyers. And as such, precision is what we were going to go with. I like sailing this ship with a steering gear mod because you do need to keep the guns firing, and yes, concealment is nice and allows you to maybe surprise a destroyer early in the game, but after that it's oftentimes not. I personally don't find it as useful, especially if you're kiting away. You do need all the steering that you can get, because while these ships are reasonably quick, they don't turn very well. So with all of that in, we have a just short of 9-second turn time, which is definitely not the world's best here. But we've got the main batteries down to 7.5 second base reload, and that thing has 12 of them, with an almost 13-kilometer range. So just raining hellfire down from long range is a good one. Which means the big question that arises now is the Black Chapayev worth getting? Is it in any way, is it sufficiently superior to the regular Chapayev and that you would want to spend your shipyard resources for? So let's take a quick look at our game in the Chapayev. Before we do that, last check on the commander. I am using the Fire Supremacy for an additional rapid reload, and obviously the Master Reloader, which is not usually a skill you would be having on a Soviet cruiser captain otherwise. I've got a 12-point commander in, and I am using the APCS for additional armor-piercing damage, especially if you're firing at enemy cruisers. You often find that the armor-piercing is vastly outperforming the high-explosive because it all comes down to RNG with the fires. So there's that. Anyway, let's get into it because we don't want to drag this out for too long. And we are in a Tier 8 game, base capture on Hourglass, against Fenyang, Kuniberti, Kansas, Sinop, Nagato, another Kuniberti, and Brooklyn on the enemy team. So, cruiser play, light cruiser play in general, and more specifically in Soviet light cruisers and in the Chapayev. The two things that they excel at is long range shell spam, and at some degree dealing with destroyers. Now the real Chapayev has a bit of an advantage here because she does get a radar. Admittedly only one charge, but she does. I'm spawning here with a Francesco Caracciolo, which should not have a huge amount of trouble with destroyers by itself, but there are 3 enemy destroyers in the team. So what I'm going to do is what I would generally call a support cruiser role in a way. So depending on where the Caracciolo is going, I am going to screen the battleship by going around the long way here around the islands, which has 2 advantages. First of all, I get some defense against incoming fire from the center, and any destroyer that's coming down this route, and I'm pretty sure there is at least one coming down this flank here, is not going to be able to easily sneak up on the battleship and then get behind the enemy battleship, the friendly battleships, or get into the friendly capture circle. Caracciolo is going center, so I'm going to be relatively on my own here, but there is the first Vittorio Kuniberti scouted by the friendly destroyers. So there's our first target already here, and we're in a perfect position to effectively spam that ship. Now from this range, if they're heavily maneuvering, you're not going to get an awful lot done. But there is a suspicious looking smoke screen, and the team actually points that out. Yep, I've seen it. Paid attention. There's the other Kuniberti. So he's going to have torpedoes away, which is why I'm already in reverse, given that I don't have sonar. But these torpedoes were pretty obvious, so I was never going to run into them. And he has decided that sitting on broadside to a Chapayev at under 7 kilometers is a good idea. Now, the problem here for me is obviously that there's a Kansas over there, and I am now also sitting broadside onto the Kansas, relatively stationary from the dodge on the Kuniberti torpedoes. So, yep, there comes the fire from the Kansas, and fortunately, for some reason, he has the high explosive loaded. Now, the enemy Kuniberti is stopping. I am not entirely certain why. Maybe he hasn't realized that he has a fuel smoke, but he's reversing and in the smoke, so it's unless he's turning, but if he's going in a straight line, yep, he's a dead Kuniberti. Now he is probably going to have torpedoes away, so again I'm slowing down here and already switching over to the high explosive for the Kansas to see if I can dodge the incoming Kuniberti torpedoes. But the Kuniberti wasn't stupid; he has paid attention. So I'm damage controlling the fire from the Kansas, who still insists on not deleting me but sending high explosive my way. Very nice of him. But Kuniberti has learned in that I dodge by braking. Now, you can't always pull the same trick twice. But now I want to be at I'm in a kiting position to the Kansas. I want to be at maximum range to the enemy Kansas, and I want to set him on fire. Unfortunately, there is a enemy light cruiser coming in. There's the Brooklyn, and I am on very low hit points, and that's a full health Brooklyn. So switch to the armor piercing, gun the engines, get out of there, dodge, and open up the range. I don't have the hit point advantage. Brooklyn has a lot of firepower with armor piercing, and he is firing armor piercing. So that tells you something. If someone comes in a Brooklyn and has switched to armor piercing, that means they're probably more dangerous than 85% of the players that you normally encounter in a Brooklyn, because they know how to use ammo types. Which means you can't just do something stupid like rushing him, but instead I'm just going to sail away and open up the distance as much as I possibly can and see that I can get fired at the Brooklyn. But fortunately for me, my job here is now done. The Brooklyn has given up the chase, although I would have gotten him eventually, because the rest of the enemy team has basically died after this flank has gotten nowhere and is rushing back to the capture circle. So our job here is done. We've held the flank. We've defeated one of the destroyers. We've prevented the enemy battleship from pushing any further, and we would have taken on the Brooklyn as well without too much trouble. And now it's just a matter of enemy teams rushing back to the capture circle. So it's just a matter of collecting whatever damage we can still do. But such is the life of a support cruiser. It's not always for the maximum of the damage or for the glory, but it really is for it really oftentimes is for the utility that you're bringing as a ship to your team, and the things that you can do tactically, where cruisers are very, very flexible. And yeah, the lack of the radar really hurts here. Now Chapayev in general at tier 8 already is at a place where if you get lucky you can get really large damage numbers, but that's not what these ships are for. These ships are not for are not just for farming fire damage on battleships. You can do that, and you can do it better than in an American light cruiser. But I mean, not to throw shade at the Cleveland, but these things are just having a higher amount of utility than the Soviets. But it's not their primary purpose. Your primary purpose as a cruiser always will be to help your team and to make sure that you use your utility to the best, as best as you can. So the rapid reload is kind of nice on paper, but in practice, and Kansas is firing armor piercing, that doesn't help him. In practice, I find it makes relatively little difference. So I would say in practice we have a ever so slightly worse Chapayev, and that's because I'm really missing that one radar charge, which comes in useful more often than you'd normally think. Especially if you are playing the ships not just as long-range HE spammer, but as, ships that support the team. And that's kind of, in my opinion, how you should be playing light cruisers. Then the utility on the regular Chapayev is better. Now you do get a little bit of extra hit points and the 2 degrees on the turret traverse, but in practice the impact of that is relatively marginal. And I personally actually prefer the precise aim over the 1 second faster reload when I've got the rapid reload active. So I would say, given that you can get a real Chapayev for free, this is really just one for the collectors. It's not actually a good captain trainer because of the rapid reload that you don't really need anywhere else. And I would say it's not a bad ship, so don't get me wrong, it's not a bad ship. And if you don't have Soviet cruisers and you really like the idea of having a tier 8 Soviet cruiser and you just don't want to grind up the line, absolutely go for it. But it's a good ship. I just feel that the tech tree one is a bit better and it's free. So there's that. Still, if you're so inclined and you feel like, yeah, it's not a line I'm grinding and I'd like to have that ship, absolutely go for it. Still a good ship. And if you already have a Chapayev, I feel like there's really no necessity of getting the black version of it. And that's it for me today. Thanks everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.